Hey everyone, welcome to an afternoon of learning. If you are here in person, which we see quite a few of y'all are, hello. We appreciate y'all taking the time to spend your afternoon with us and talk a little bit about coaching honors in action and leading students to and through our research program. Maybe you are watching this later, which of course is why we record. And if you're watching this later, we appreciate you as well. We're all moving in lots of different directions, and especially as the return of the fall semester gets closer and closer, sometimes we'll connect live and in person. Sometimes you'll be watching this a little bit later, but we are excited about today, and I'm excited about today. My name is Blake Ellis. I'm our Chief Engagement Officer at Phi Theta Kappa and work with our wonderful student engagement team, some of whom you see on the call. But I get so excited about honors in action because, if you're in the community college space, that there are plenty of organizations, in student life that do lots of different things. But every year, the top transfer and the top workforce students really come from Phi Theta Kappa chapters, not just because they have that name, on their diploma or on their resume, but because at Phi Theta Kappa, we work really hard to make sure that students have opportunities to grow as scholars and as leaders. And so it's not about just becoming a member, it's about becoming active enough that a student can build their resume to become competitive, but even more than being competitive for scholarships and for transfer, to truly grow as a person, to think critically and clearly, to communicate effectively, to bring people together around a common goal. And all of those things run through our Honors in Action program. You're fortunate today to be hearing from Susan Edwards, who's a mentor of mine in this program. When I was a newer advisor and didn't know anything about Phi Theta Kappa, Susan very graciously took me aside and kind of explained to me so much about our honors programs. It wasn't until years later that I kind of came to realize she had created these programs. So it wasn't like I was learning from someone who had just kind of got a little bit of knowledge. She had created these programs. And one of the reasons, we always look at honors in action. We always are open to kind of tweaking the process. But one of the reasons that it has stayed relatively consistent for so many years now is because the three parts of what you do in honors in action and the scoring that lines up with the scoring, those are things that all of us do over and over again in our careers and in our lives. Is we try to research a solution to a problem, come up with some type of action, and then document the results of that. So we believe in honors in action, and you're going to be hearing from an expert today. But I want to make sure before I jump off here, that you have access to our entire student engagement team. We have on the call Reagan Chastain, who's our curriculum designer and who does unbelievable work with our PTK Edge programs. I was in a meeting earlier today and someone was like in the fifth minute of talking about how much they like Reagan. And I was like, I know we love her too, but we got to wrap this up, But it was Melissa Wyndham, professor at Mississippi State, and she had a chance to engage with Reagan. So popular across the board in all states. I'm here in Texas, but they love you over in Mississippi too. We have Patty Van Adder, who's our chapter outreach and development coordinator, who really organizes these sessions and is available as a resource for our almost 3,500 chapter advisors as you build programs and work with students. Jennifer Stanford is not on the call. She is traveling to the Colorado-Wyoming region. So if you're out in Colorado-Wyoming region, you may get to see her soon. She's our Associate VP of Program Implementation and works on our college project and lots of our other programs. But the person you'll be hearing from today is Susan Edwards, who is the chair of our Honors Program Council, which really comes up with our honors study topic. And to give you an idea of the care that we put into this and that the council puts into our honors program, Susan just spent a week with the Honors Program Council, very select group, very competitive to get in that on that council group of community college leaders and scholars. And they were working on the 24-25 honors study topic. So when you work through our Honors in Action program, know that we have already on the front end spent a couple of years developing that. But it's Susan who really has guided us through this program for years to fight so that students can have access not just to service, which is important, and not just to fellowship and fun, which is important, but to scholarship and leadership. And at Phi Theta Kappa, we do believe in a rigorous research-based approach to creating change. We don't want students and chapters just out there throwing things at a wall and hoping that it sticks. We want them to work through our honors program guide, our honors study topic, and to give a rigorous thought to the projects that they create. But you are the coaches for Honors in Action, and you're going to learn today from the greatest Honors in Action coach of them all. So Susan Edwards is a person who knows so much about so many things. But I will say this. She knows she's an expert in Honors in Action, but you'll probably get a feel as you move through this presentation. Susan is also one of the best read and most well-traveled people that you'll ever meet. So if you're interested in like travel tips or like what's the latest book or even what's an interesting music, maybe that's off the wall, my tastes sometimes run a bit more pedestrian, but I love that Susan can talk high-level scholarship, but I can throw some Taylor Swift at her and she can handle it as well. So you're learning from one of the greats, but please enjoy this afternoon of learning. Thanks for being with us today. I'll turn it over to, is it Susan right now or Patty? Susan, I'm turning it over to Susan.
Thank you, Blake. And it's like I paid him to do that. He's just so wonderful to work with. And I'm proud that I had like a little piece of mentoring Blake Ellis. In fact, I'm so proud of it. Sometimes people call him Blake Edwards, which makes me even more proud that we could be related.
It sounds like a PTK scandal in the making. You know what I mean?
It does, doesn't it? But thank you so much for being here and thinking about and talking about coaching in Honors in Action. And I just want to invite you as we go along, if you have questions or if you have coaching tips, please feel free to share those in the chat. I can't see them immediately, but I will get to them. And it's always really nice when there are really wonderful coaches in the room for people to share those things with everybody who's in the webinar. So I want to do several things this afternoon. One is to talk just a little bit about why Honors in Action. And then I want to talk about coaching just in general and why coaching. And then I do want to do some basics about Honors in Action because I feel like maybe some people who are here this afternoon or listening to this in the future may have some questions about Honors in Action. So just from the coach's point of view, looking at Honors in Action, I want to talk about some tips there. So let's go to the next slide, please. And here are just some Honors in Action basics. Honors in Action is key to the second part of Phi Theta Kappa's mission, and that is to provide opportunities for college students to grow as scholars and leaders. And I think sometimes just knowing that makes it easier to talk about Honors in Action, to coach Honors in Action, just knowing that growth as scholars and leaders is really important. And then Blake also mentioned the idea of intentional service, and Honors in Action is all about intentional service, that service that's grounded in research. And for Phi Theta Kappa's Honors in Action, particularly research into our biennial honor study topic. So other things about this, it only takes one or two members. You know, it takes hopefully a great coach and an advisor or some assistant coaches. We're going to talk about that. And one student, one member, one officer who's excited about the possibilities and gets another person involved, because Honors in Action is a team project, but it takes two people to have a team, and then chapters can build from there. And Honors in Action has been a great equalizer. There are chapters that are very small, but because they followed the process through Honors in Action, they've done really wonderful projects and students have grown as scholars and leaders. So have no fear. Don't be concerned if you don't have a big chapter. That's okay with Honors in Action, because it's all about taking it one step at a time, laying a foundation to build upon, not just for the project, but for your chapter. Because once a chapter gets involved with Honors in Action, the people who come after the team that works on an Honors in Action project has that foundation, can say, well, they did it, and maybe we can take what they learned and we can do this too, and we can move forward. Working on an Honors in Action project does help earn your chapter 5-star status. The Honors in Action projects at the 5-star level in the chapter 5 development plan. So that's something that's big. So just working on a project can gain recognition for your chapter. And that's big because recognition can gain support on campus. It can gain support with potential members. It can gain support in the region. So we really encourage that. So 2 things: projects can be completed between January 1st and December 31st in the calendar year. Excuse me. I know that there are some chapters who have started already with Honors in Action, but overwhelmingly, chapters start in the summer and in the fall. So the really good news is it's the beginning of August. If your team hasn't started yet, you're fine. You're in good shape. You can start as this academic year begins, and you can complete your project by December 31st. And then, of course, one thing we encourage you to do, it's the last step in Honors in Action, is to write the honors, well, not you, you're all advisors, to coach the team to write an Honors in Action Hallmark Award entry that can be submitted by January 18th, 2023. And it's another exercise where students can learn a lot about brainstorming and fashioning applications and looking at what is important to put in a document, what can be left out, how to be lean and mean with writing and those kinds of things. So there's so much that students can learn through Honors in Action, and so much that they can learn through your coaching. So here, let me talk about some coaching tips. And Serena Williams, who is, if not the all-time great female tennis player, one of the greats, and she just announced this week her retirement from tennis, which makes me a little sad. I admit I always thought that she would break the records for wins in the major tournaments, but she has a really good record. So you got to say that she's a champion, and again, probably the greatest of all time to this point. And even Serena Williams has coaches. So that's one of the things about Honors in Action, that we know students coming into the chapters, if they've made it into Phi Theta Kappa, they're good students. They have great academic records. But none of us would expect students coming into our classes to know everything that we have to say. I taught history, so I don't have everybody come in thinking that they know it all, so we don't really have to talk about this. But interestingly, sometimes chapter advisors think that about students and think, well, it doesn't matter. But you've got the greatest of all time who has coaches, and you can say that about all kinds of things in life, and certainly about sporting events. So Honors in Action is a way for members to get better at what they do, to develop skills or to hone skills. And they need you and the people around you to help them do that. And that's why it's so important that we really do want chapter advisors to coach students. So one thing you can do, of course, is take a positive approach. We don't hear it much anymore, but certainly in the beginning, we would hear things like, Honors in Action, oh, I don't want to have students research. They don't like research. Well, of course, if you approach it that way, what happens is that students say, oh, I don't want to research, and this is tough. I mean, they might come at that approach anyway. So the more positive you can be about, here are the opportunities for you. Here's what we can learn together. I'm going to help coach you through this. I'm going to introduce you to mentors and assistant coaches who are going to help, and you're going to come out of this with really developed skills, maybe some things that you hadn't really honed before. And so the advisor's attitude and the approach matters in Honors in Action. So that's a general coaching tip, that the more you can be positive, even if you don't feel it initially, fake it till you make it. That you know that this is going to be good, that you're going to really work through this with them and think about the things that they can learn. And that's part of building rapport and relationships, right? That one of the nice things also about working with a Phi Theta Kappa chapter is that you get to know students outside the classroom. And for a lot of advisors, that may be the chapter officers in general, or it may be people who have been in your classes or been in colleagues, classes who you know their names, but you get to know a little bit more about them. And Honors in Action allows it as well, because you get to work closely. So the more that you can spend some time initially building rapport and relationships with the students and among students, so they get to know one another. And it doesn't mean, I had an advisor who said they're all going out bowling, which is really fun, right? And that does build rapport. The Honors Program Council this past week, we did take them to, for example, hiking in El Yunque, so that they could talk together and do something fun together. But it might mean something like using our leadership development studies curriculum and working on value sort with a team and getting them to understand one another and where they're coming from and how they communicate and what they hope to get out of Phi Theta Kappa and out of the program. So you can use activities, you can use just fun stuff, as well as some more serious leadership development to build that rapport and build relationships. Because the more you can do that, the more likely people are to give each other slack when things go wrong or when they get very tired, say in December and early January, which is maybe the most tired part of the Phi Theta Kappa year before we get to celebrate in April. So to look at those things is important as coaches, and then to really listen to students and to empower them, listening about what they hope to gain out of Honors in Action, listening to what they know, what kind of skills they hope to gain, and listening also, sometimes students don't know what they don't know, which is also true about all of us, right? I mean, that's not just something that's true of students. So sometimes listening and asking questions and seeing how you can bring out students and what they're hoping to learn really can help them move forward as leaders. And it's a great way to coach students to really figure out what it is they'd like to do, where it is they'd like to go. And listening to, with Honors in Action, there is a process, and it's starting with the academic investigation, which I'll talk about in a minute. But a lot of times students will want to put the cart before the horse. They have an action they want to do, and they're just going to sort of back into everything else. When you hear that, that's a chance as a coach to say, here's why you want to follow the process. Here's how it's going to help. Not just the individual students, but the chapter and the college. So if listening to what people are saying, listening to what they're not saying, can really help students grow as scholars and leaders. And then facilitating those conversations, getting students to talk through things. I was at a regional meeting a few weeks ago, and some students were talking about that they wanted to do a big project. And they knew they wanted it to be big, and they wanted to have a lot of people come to it, but they didn't know what the project itself was. They hadn't thought about the honor study topic. They hadn't thought about the theme. They hadn't done any research. They hadn't thought about what they wanted to do. A coach can help people sort of back up and think about the things that in the process that they need to do first. And that's one of those things that you can really help students with. Sometimes I will say, when I was a chapter advisor, sometimes I could say something, and if I had another faculty member or another person say the same thing, it actually had more power. So that's another way to coach, right? Is to bring other people in. They can say the same thing you're saying, and yet, because you're with students all the time, maybe hearing it from another person, or at least hearing it again, helps students, and that facilitating those conversations can help as well. Your commitment to continuous learning, you're here, or you're listening to this recording, so you are committed to continuous learning. That has an impact on students as well. Serena Williams, constantly tweaking her game. She came to it with a lot of power, a lot of talent, a lot of practice behind her, but she still had to tweak her game and could keep going as long as she did, because she adjusted what she was doing. And that's what we hope for all of us and for students as well. You know, coaching in the moment, there are a lot of times that you'll be working with students on maybe something else, but you'll see an opening where you can coach them on why things are important. For example, with honors in action, maybe why academic sources, why is it important to know sources? Maybe why is it important to work with a librarian? What do research librarians know that maybe the rest of us don't know? You know, they've got all of their professional development and their degrees and expertise in seeking out great sources and great academic sources. And so just helping students to know as they're talking about things or as they're looking at things, even helping them in the moment know the right questions to ask when they're looking for things can be really helpful. And then giving constructive feedback, you know, and we all know what constructive feedback is. You don't want to tear somebody down, even when they're suggesting something that may seem a little ridiculous. No, the advisor I watch, and it's like, I don't know what I want to do, but I want lots of people there. Well, that would be, you know, it'd be easy to roll your eyes and just think, oh, let me just go talk to somebody else. But, you know, really talking about, well, let's back this up and look at the process and be very constructive with the person. At the end of the process, that person's probably going to come back and say, wow, I was, you know, really off base. I really wasn't thinking through how to do this. And so just being as positive as you can about your feedback, while still being fair and firm and helping the person understand, here's why a goal isn't just to bring a lot of people in to this project, you know, that looking at things really helps. And then I mentioned sort of vaguely at the beginning of this, utilizing experts as assistant coaches, which certainly Serena Williams does. We're going to start football season again. You know, all the great coaches, I guess, and even the rotten ones, but they all have assistant coaches, right? So well-paid assistant coaches too, in the case of college football. But you know, they have coaches for all sorts of things. So don't feel you have to do all the coaching. You know, if there's something about the honors and action process, or really anything about Phi Theta Kappa that you feel somebody else maybe has greater expertise, or, you know, you just need a break from talking about things and coaching, or you want to bring a different voice in, ask faculty on campus, ask staff, ask administrators, ask community members who may be able to come in and help and really help students grow. Let's go with the next slide. So let's talk about honors in action and really coaching through this. Just helping students know that there is an honors in action process. It's a holistic process. For Phi Theta Kappa, we really want people to follow the process, that there's a lot of learning that takes place by following this process, the intentional learning, so much that members can learn from this process that will help them with scholarship applications, with job applications, like mentioned, with working on the job. We all have to follow processes like these. And in fact, I think the honors in action process is a lot of what we certainly do in the academic world. So we have a planning rubric, and I will mention that it is the same rubric that is used to score honors in action Hallmark Award entries. So it's also the judging rubric. You can find it on pages 24 through 26 in the honors program guide, the current honors program guide, and you can find it online at ptk.org. And if you go to programs and the Hallmark Awards, the rubric is there as well. If students don't know to do this already, and they may not, get them the rubric. They can download it, they can print copies, you can print copies, and start the planning with the rubric, so that really members are looking with the end in mind. Most members will come into this process not knowing that there is an honors in action rubric, not knowing what it looks like, not knowing you know, what maybe the language means in working through the rubric. So either you or another coach, excuse me, could come in and really just spend a couple of hours looking at the rubric. Here are the things that we need to know about this process. And here's, excuse me, what we can consider as we're planning our honors and action process. Keeping a journal throughout the process. It can be an electronic journal. It can be really old school. I will say that until the last day of the Honors Program Council meeting this past week, we all used pen and paper, which doesn't typically happen, but we all decided that we would do that this time. And it worked really well for us to take our notes away. But however you do it, having people take notes and really thinking about the process and what the chapter has done and how people have grown, and even keeping those APA citations in that journal makes everything easier as you move along. And students may not really know how to journal for something like this. That may be one of those assistant coaches you bring in. If journaling is not something that you do well or even are interested in doing, bring someone in. A former member of the Honors Program Council, Dr. Terry Ruckel, who's from Pearl River Community College, is expert at journaling. For example, I'll throw her name out there. You can bring someone like that in to really help students work through that process. We do in the Honors Program Guide have lists of questions to consider as while you're journaling, written by Terry Ruckel, I should mention. And so that's one of the tools for you to use as you coach students, that we aren't expecting everybody to reinvent the wheel. We've got questions, we've got things for them to consider as they write their notes. And then the other thing, and this is a really important thing for looking at the Honors in Action process, the foundation of Honors in Action is the honor study topic. Which is currently the art and science of play, which is very exciting. The honor study topic, the current one, has 7 themes. The theme is the lens through which to view the honor study topic. So, and I'll talk a little bit more about themes, but it's just one of the keys that sometimes chapters forget as they're moving through the Honors in Action process, that that chapters move to the themes and forget that they're studying the art and science of play. So that can be really important as well as you're coaching students. So the next slide, please. Okay, here's the process in an infographic. It's investigate and analyze, strategize and lead, assess and reflect. So there are 3 big parts to the Honors in Action project. They're all things that are part of the rubric and part of what you see in the Honors Program Guide, but you're also welcome to use this graphic. And the whole process starts with setting research objectives. And that sometimes can be baffling to members, but it really just means things like maybe how many people would you like on your team? You want to build an Honors in Action team. It might mean inviting the research librarian to come in and to give a workshop on identifying and analyzing academic sources. It could be that here you write about how many sources you'd like to find, or what you're really interested in learning about in terms of the art and science of play. So those kinds of things. If objectives and talking about objectives is not something that you would like to work with, or you think, oh, this is a great opportunity to bring an assistant coach in, do that. These are the kinds of things that people on campus especially have great expertise, and they can help students. And I think that helps members feel like they're on more solid ground. They've gone through some training to do this. And of course, they can put that on their resumes that they've been through that training and they've worked through it. So working on objectives and setting those before beginning research, looking at the Honors Program Guide, looking at the topic, selecting a theme, doing academic research is important. Developing research conclusions, really important. Again, this is one of those things that can be really difficult for members, that even though they've been through classes, they don't always know how to really develop research conclusions or develop a research question even. Those are places you can coach. Those are places you can bring in, those assistant coaches to help them feel comfortable doing that. We do have some tools online, and we have them in the honors program guide. But again, sometimes it helps to hear someone in person or on Zoom talk about it, and I encourage you to do that. Members should go all the way through the investigation stage before determining an action for honors and action. So it's after the research conclusions are developed and analyzed, excuse me, that students would then go on to determine what the action would be and set action objectives, set collaboration objectives. Honors and action, excuse me, requires that chapters work with, or students work with, people on campus who are not part of Phi Theta Kappa and people in the community. And that can be in all sorts of ways. But notice that collaborators, that's another term for assistant coaches, right? I mean, that's a way to bring collaborators in, to have people working with you and helping students grow their skills. So collaborators come from those two places, but they can be all sorts of different people with different talents who are going to make the project better. The one thing I want to point out there, because it's in the rubric, but chapters don't always think about it, is that you want to your team wants to have a collaboration plan, how they're going to communicate with collaborators to ensure that they help the project be strengthened as a result of their participation. And that might include everything for how often, how do you approach them? How often are you going to speak together? You know, what happens if your collaborators say, you know, you really maybe aren't going in the right direction with this. I'm going to recommend some other things that you might do. What happens at that point? It also means maybe giving them a final report, a nice white paper that shows what they did. It could even be the Honors in Action Hallmark Award entry that they could share. So, excuse me, you want to make sure that through that process, students are growing as scholars and leaders as well. And then, you know, the assessing and reflecting. Reflection is a part of the entire process for Honors in Action. It's just so important through each of these parts of Honors in Action. And we do consider the Honors in Action Hallmark Award entry a reflection piece. So it isn't just the journaling. We hope that the journaling will help students grow, but we also hope that will help with the Honors in Action Hallmark Award entry. And we want students to do that writing, to do that thinking for a couple of reasons. One, because it does improve their skills when it comes to doing scholarship applications and job applications, but also it helps us when we know what you're doing. You know, we love reading that thing. We love knowing what chapters are doing and how students are growing as scholars and leaders. So we appreciate when students take that chance. And this was last November, an advisor asked me, well, so do the Honors in Action Hallmark Award entries have to be good? And no one had ever asked that question before, but the answer is no. Of course, it's great when they're good, but this is all about students growing as scholars and leaders. So if working on an Honors in Action Hallmark Award entry, a very first one, you know, helps them grow as scholars and leaders, that's perfect. You know, they're working their way through that, and then they're going to leave that entry for the people who come behind them and help them grow as scholars and leaders. And that's very exciting. So this, again, this is process. There's much more detail in the Honors Program Guide and in Research Edge and in some of the other things that we have for you, tools that we have for you to really study Honors in Action. But this is the process as you work through it. Let's go to the next slide, please. So thank you. I wanted to just look at the honors study topic for a minute and then just talk about what you find in each theme. One of the things that's really important and that you can help with coaching students is that, of course, the overall topic is the art and science of play. And then we have 7 themes. And of course, it's very helpful. The Honors Program Council 2 years ago, when they were working on this, put play in every single theme's title, which helps everyone remember that they're looking at the art and science of play. It's not always that way, but with this honors study topic, it is. Hooray. But there is an overarching question for each of these themes. And the overarching question is really important. And it's one of the things that you can coach students about, because sometimes they may look at the theme, but never look at the question that's written right under the theme title in the honors program guide. So for example, let's go to the next slide. I'm going to show you maybe how it works there. Oh, let's go back. I took that slide out. See how I am? I'll just do it from here. Every single theme has the theme title, the overarching question, an introduction that was written by several members of the Honors Program Council, and then some resources that are meant to be there as possible sources. We get asked all the time, do we have to use these sources? And of course, the answer is no. We also get asked, can we use these sources? And the answer to that is yes. That the chapters can use those sources and take a look at them. The Honors Program Council thought they were important sources in terms of looking at the theme as it relates to the art and science of play. So let me see. I think I'm going to go with, let's use theme 3, systems of play. I was just reading an article in the New York Times this morning. It was about New Zealand's rugby team, very famous, the All Blacks. And, probably the very most famous rugby team in the world. And it was an interesting article because they're arguing that the All Blacks are in a period of decline, that they've dominated international play for decades. And when they looked at in what ways does one's role, identity, and access influence the experience of play, the thing that's happened with New Zealand is that they said that, boys and now girls used to all play rugby. I mean, that was like the national sport. And now only about 7% of New Zealanders play rugby anymore. And that's having an impact because they used to have people, they'd go to school and then they'd play rugby in clubs outside of school, and then they just move up through the ranks. And so the All Blacks always got to choose the best and brightest players from New Zealand who had practiced for years and years and years before they got to the international level. And no one could keep up with that. Rugby wasn't as popular in other places as it was in New Zealand. But all of a sudden, there are cracks in the system. Ireland, for example, beat New Zealand, the All Blacks, twice in a series they played in New Zealand. Which of course was horrifying to New Zealanders. And Ireland has a good team too. But one of the things that the analysis in the article said, one of the things happening is that increasingly rugby is being played in elite schools and in elite clubs, and not everybody in New Zealand has access to those schools and those clubs. So they're missing out on all sorts of people who could become star rugby players because they don't have access. So their role and identity and access is having an influence on the greater rugby landscape in New Zealand. And so the result has been, there were two things. One of the things was that only about 7%, I think I mentioned that, of New Zealanders are playing rugby. The other thing that they happen because they've got this pipeline, but it's narrowing, is that other teams have had to learn how to get around the All Blacks being so good. And they particularly noted the Irish team that had done that. And New Zealand has not been able to really be flexible and be able to work around the other people's style of play. They haven't adjusted to the fact that other teams are getting good. So that's having an impact on rugby and on the All Blacks. And of course, there's hand wringing, because how can this happen? There shouldn't be teams that are as good as the All Blacks. And you could look at it, of course, from another lens and say, well, the All Blacks, were the gold standard, and people have been working for decades to get there. And so it's really interesting. There are lots of interesting things somebody could study about how a person's role and identity and access has influenced the experience of play in terms of rugby, how that's had an effect on the All Black, how it's had an effect on New Zealanders, how it's having an effect on the rest of the world, and how people are learning to play rugby. And by the way, a lot of young New Zealanders are now playing basketball. So that's becoming a sport of choice there, according to the article. So there are lots of things you can do there, of course, and that's just one that was in the news this week, very recently, about systems of play and the art and science of play. And there's so many places that students can learn and think about this. Newspapers, for the purposes of Honors in Action, aren't considered academic sources. TED Talks aren't either, but they're great places to get ideas. I mean, I haven't read a whole book on New Zealand rugby or on the All Blacks, but I would now. That article was really interesting to read. And so I certainly had heard of the All Blacks and have seen them play on TV a couple of times, but I didn't know a lot about it. But, you know, those kind of things can spark intellectual curiosity and move someone to look at something beyond what that initial spark was. So the other thing about these themes is that this is a way to know whether the team with which you're coaching, where you're working, is in the right theme. So, for example, if I looked at the All Blacks and I read that article and I thought, you know, maybe it's just the physical environment that the All Blacks play in. You know, maybe the weather is really good and that's had an influence, and their All Black stadium, you know, New Zealand adores rugby. So the fans come to the stadium and it's electric when they're playing. And maybe that has an effect on the All Blacks and how they play and how New Zealand sees them and how the rest of the world coming into play sees them. Well, that wouldn't so much be about role and identity and access, but that might be about architecture and design. That, you know, if you look at how the design of a physical environment like a rugby field has an impact, what the impact of fans is when you're in a situation like that. I live in Houston, Texas, and I love baseball, and the Astros play in Minute Maid Park. No hate for this, but the Astros love to close the top, the dome in the ballpark, partly because it's hellishly hot in Houston, but also because it is so noisy once they close that. That has an impact. You know, the design of the ballpark has an impact on the play in the field. I went to undergraduate school in Florida, and our team used to turn off the air conditioning in the basketball arena when northern teams would come to town, knowing that they wouldn't be as experienced in playing in that kind of heat. And so those kinds of things have an impact as well. And not that students want to learn the tricks or how to be ugly when you're playing another team. They should be sporting. But that's the kind of stuff that we looked at. I know I wrote about the design of music venues, for example, which can make a difference. So you can go in all sorts of directions, but just help students know where they are. And it's okay to move themes. You know, if they look collectively and they all look at the overarching question and you think, oh, we're not really in the right place, move themes. That's part of the process. And they can document, okay, here's why we moved. We looked at the question and we realized what interested us wasn't what we were looking at. So next slide, please. Really for this one. Resources, I mentioned them. They are good. If you go to ptk.org/honors, we have, you know, the rubric, we have a workbook, journaling guide, guides to developing a research question and academic sources. We have a lot of film resources. We have a really, I think, really robust list of films with annotations. They're not all academic sources. In fact, a lot of them are not academic. I mean, Stranger Things is in there, for example. Love that show. So, but they are things to help spark people's interest. So sometimes it's just fun to watch something fun and have a discussion and think about the things that members are really interested in, or they can share what they're working on the honor study with the honor study topic for the chapter at large, for example, and maybe the Honors in Action team helps with that. So those are there. Excuse me, Civic Scholar, the Phi Theta Kappa's Journal of Undergraduate Research. A lot of times students want to know, well, what does an award-winning Honors in Action entry look like? We've got a lot of them for you to look at. We have 3 editions of Civic Scholar online. The 4th one will go online early this fall, and there are 18 new Honors in Action Hallmark Award entries that are featured in Civic Scholar. And so they can look at how the variations of what those entries look like. We have an Honors in Action honors case study challenge. It's a really good way to get started with Honors in Action. The deadline is early November, but you can take a look at there. We have 4 awards of $500 each, and the award winners are recognized at PTK Catalyst. So it's another way to get started with Honors in Action and also just have a really nice opportunity to win an award. And then we have Honors in Action grants. If your chapter hasn't looked at this, if you take a look at the grant application, it's up now. Your chapter can apply for up to $1,000 to use toward the Honors in Action project. The deadline is September 12th for grant applications. We would love to have you consider it. Honors in Action grants, those funds can be used at any step of the process. So if you're just getting started, that's okay. Take a look at the grant and the application and think about how you might spend those funds. And then I mentioned Research Edge. We're always here for you. We're here to answer questions. I'm happy to answer some now if you've got some. And thank you to Reagan and Patty for posting during this. I've seen those things go in here. And I'm always happy to answer questions about Honors in Action or anything, excuse me, honors programming. So it's susan.edwards@ptk.org. We're here. There are no bad questions. We want to answer all of them. And we so appreciate your willingness to work with students outside the classroom and to coach them and help provide opportunities for them to grow as scholars and leaders. The whole purpose of Phi Theta Kappa, beyond the academic recognition, and the purpose of Honors in Action. So thank you. And if you've got some questions, I am happy to answer them. I and Reagan and Patty are happy to answer them.
I just want to say good job, Susan. Y'all always do a good job every week when y'all have these programs. I learned so much that it really helped me with my chapter. So I just want to give a good shout out for all of y'all and thank y'all for y'all's time for doing this every week, twice a month for us. So I really appreciate this.
Oh, thank you so much. And this is, Patty is our leader when it comes to this. So this was her brainchild and she has made it happen. So we appreciate your willingness to be here and really appreciate Patty helping us to get this done.
You're so sweet. I was an advisor too, and I'm a little bit of honesty. I think that always helps. It doesn't come easy, if you're new at being an advisor or you're just new at the chapter trying to engage in Honors in Action. You look at the guide, and first, when I used to look at the guides as an advisor, I'd be, I can't move this mountain this year. It's just not. And I would think of different reasons why we shouldn't even try it. And we only had two officers and maybe one member in the very beginning coming to meetings. And, but when you carve out time to sit with your chapter with the guide and maybe not even have the guide and just, have brainstorming sessions where you're talking about play and looking at the art of play or the science of play and what does play mean, and there's organic sorts of conversations start to build, and you'll find they get interested in it. And I always I said it to my students when I was an advisor, and I say it to advisors now. We are not looking for Nobel Peace Prize projects with these, right? And I think a lot of the times we get bogged down by thinking that, this has to be huge, right? And it's not. It's what we want the end result to be is for them to develop the skills that this program is there for. And so, and we're here, so like Susan says, we're here. This entire month of sessions is all about Honors in Action. We will do 2 sessions next week, one with our new advisors and then one with advisors and leaders. And so even if there's a time where if you couldn't catch it or watch the video and you have questions or you just want to, you know, talk about ideas, please reach out to us and we're here for you.
Thank you, Patty. I just saw in the chat that that someone had written, it seems like the definition of play is open. It is. The Honors Program Council, when they developed this topic, they started with the idea of gaming. They're all gamers, which was very interesting for me because I am not. So I learned a lot from them. But ultimately, they wanted the idea of play to be very open to all sorts of things. So I gave some sports examples today, but there's so many other ways, you know, music and art. And we had a discussion this past week on knitting, and, you know, knitting is play. I mean, there's so many ways to interpret it. So yes, it is not defined narrowly with the art and science of play. It's meant to be broad-based.
Any other questions? And please feel free to raise your hand or just call it out or in the chat. Just wanted to let you guys are going to be the first to know, and anybody who's watching this video subsequently, is we made a change of where we are going to be putting these valuable sessions, these resources, for you to be able to access them. Reagan and the team have moved all of the videos from, remember we were using the website, the chapter development page. We actually moved all the advisor sessions to the 5-star curriculum. So if you go into the 5-star advisor curriculum and go down to the, I should be sharing I could just show you from here. You go into the 5-star advisor curriculum and you can, you know, scroll down to under level 5, you will see chapter engagement resources. And this is where you will find the sessions, upcoming sessions. If you're a new advisor, their sessions, and then all of the ones that we have done so far. This one today will be added as soon as it gets processed, and you'll see it under Honors in Action. And the other thing that we also did was, which I think is great, because we were finding that for the students to have the sessions that they attended to be able to watch, you would have had to have copied and pasted. And so we made it a little easier, which I'm really glad. If you just direct them to go to PTK, get an edge. I know I'm going the long way. I don't know why I did it this way, but here we go. But if they just go into PTK Edge, and you also have access to all of these as well, and they just fall down here to Phi Theta Kappa program resources, and again, all of the ones. And we have these by program, right? So when we did sessions on 5-star, they'll be placed under there. The video and the PowerPoints are there under each of the links in one spot. So if you are meeting with new chapter officers when classes resume, you know, those were the sessions that we held so far for, you know, pertaining to chapter officers. This session, not this session. This session is going to be for advisors only in the curriculum, but when we do the session for everybody next week, it'll go under Honors in Action. And we do have College Project that we did a couple of weeks ago, which is there. I'm going to stop sharing. One of the things that we're going to do is we'll always email you when the link to the session. We're just automatically going to be putting them here, and we just ask that you know, help yourself by going over there instead of us creating. I don't think half of you get the emails that we send. I think they go straight to spam, and you can't find them anyway. So we're just going to change the way we're doing it, and just remind everybody that all of these sessions and PowerPoints can be found in those 2 locations from here on. Okay.
Patty, can I say one more thing? Because I just saw her Facebook. But next Tuesday, we have a session on new advisors and Honors in Action. And the fabulous Anna Gergen is going to be presenting with me. And so very excited about that because she is a new advisor and very, very successful. So can't wait.
Will there be a session on case study? We will maybe infuse that into the session for chapter leaders and advisors, which is the 17th. Am I saying that right?
Next Wednesday.
Next
You can do that.
Wednesday.
I just created a brand new PowerPoint for the honors case study, and so Patty, we can add that somewhere, either in the advisor course or we'll get it put up somewhere so that, and then you can actually, you know what we can do? I can give it to you and you can send it out in the link with the videos this week also.
Mm-hmm. Sounds good. Sounds great. Alrighty. Well, if there isn't anything else for today, we thank you again for coming. Thank you, Susan. It's thank you. You make it makes it so much better, right? I hope everybody feels a little bit more confident, and please feel free to reach out, and we will see you soon.
Thank y'all again.
You're welcome.